I have Jennie Lakenan here, and years ago I wrote an article where I ranked the best coaching websites that I knew of. And I kept coming to one site, one person's site who made all the websites, and it was Jennie. And since then, we've kind of been in touch. I've had some clients work with her. I really love how focused you are, Jennie, on specifically working with coaches because it's not like you can just apply a general website template to a coaching or online course business. There's certain things you really need to get right if you want to book consults, if you want to get people to sign up for your email list. And I love that you have beautiful sites, but also that convert and that work. And I find that a lot of times people are one or the other. So excited to talk with you. How are you doing today?
So good. I'm excited for this. It's fun to we've talked so much, just via email. It's really fun to meet in person and yeah, I'm excited to talk today.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear a little bit more. I know that you kind of have roots in the life coach school, right? I know you've worked with a lot of clients there and you had your own journey as a coach a little bit and doing coaching with others before you started doing websites. Could you share a little bit how you came upon this work?
Yeah, for sure. So I found coaching, oh gosh, it's been like 5, 6 years ago now. And it was through the life coach school and the life coach school podcast. And I really I didn't even join their program or anything as like a client. I just was listening to the podcast and learning the tools kind of passively. And but even that was so powerful and changed so many things. My relationship with my husband got better. I lost a bunch of baby weight. I was dealing with postpartum depression that I didn't even really realize I was dealing with. And I was able to kind of get through that. And it was just so amazing. And I was like, I love these tools. I love what I'm learning through coaching and thought work and all of the tools that we learn there. And I thought, oh, well, I'm going to be a life coach. This is awesome. This is my dream career. And so I did what I think we all do when we're checking out a new career and kind of seeing if it's for us. I started talking to as many coaches as would give me the time of day, online. I would just find them on social media and stuff. And a lot of them were going through training, with the life coach school currently at that time. And so they were giving away a lot of free coaching and I'd sign up for a free coaching call. And then in the last 5 minutes, I'd be like, okay, great. No, would you just tell me what I can do to prepare to go through certification myself, whether it's through the life coach school or somewhere else. And they all were so sweet and of course answered my questions. And the more that I went through that process and looked them up beforehand just to kind of get an idea of who they were, the more I realized oh, these coaches either don't have a website or their website is not doing them justice. It's not showing the skills and the caliber of coaching that they have, that they're learning, through this really great certification program. And, like we do as entrepreneurs, I was like, oh, well, that's a problem that needs to be solved. And I can solve that. That's something, I had kind of a technical background, but also I knew I just could learn whatever I needed to learn um, to do that. And so I started building websites for coaches thinking oh, this is just kind of an interim thing. And eventually I'll still certify and then I'll go full time with coaching. But by the time I actually finished certification, I had just this beautiful web design business helping coaches and I loved it. And I also realized I can get way more coaching out into the world by helping coaches with their websites than I can just by being a coach myself. So that's kind of where I came about. I am a certified coach through the life coach school and I've worked with coaches, a lot of coaches in that program as well as in lots of other programs, certification programs. And it's just amazing work. I don't actually have a coaching practice other than when I coach my clients through the web design process, which if anyone's ever written copy, they know there's a lot of stuff that comes up. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's great. Do you feel like I want to also tease for folks that we are going to do some audits of 3 or 4 sites after I ask Jennie some questions, and we'll look at real examples of this. Do you feel like websites still matter? Some coaches will have a just social media presence or an Instagram profile. And you can absolutely build a business that way. Or there's the thinking of oh, it's not a website, it's like a funnel, which is okay,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of, it's kind of the same thing, but versus landing pages and things like that. So what is the role of a website these days for coaches? Why is it still important?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like you said, you can absolutely have a business with a social media presence and not have a website. But I know that it still matters because I get coaches that come to me and they're like, "Yeah, I know I don't need a website." And they kind of almost feel a little bit of shame about it, but they're like, "But I talk to people and they're like, "Oh yeah, this sounds, like potential clients." And like the potential clients like, "Oh, yeah, this sounds really interesting." Or maybe they are like, "Oh, my sister could totally use you," or whatever. And the next question is always, "What's your website?" So that I can send them there or I can follow up with you after this. And then the coach is kind of like, "Oh," and then I feel a little bit insecure being like, "Oh, well, just DM me on Instagram," or like, whatever. And I think it's still really important because you are who Google says you are ultimately. And if someone can't Google your name and have like some kind of website come up, even if it's a really simple, like one pager, I mean, to me, it says something about your credibility. It says something about how seriously you're taking your business. And if you have like a funnel, I think that's for sure a step up. Like having a sort of like a set of landing pages that all leads to each other, like that's definitely a step up from not having a website at all. But I do still think that people are used to kind of coming to that homepage. They're used to the user experience of being able to explore the site on their own as a user, like clicking about and work with you in a blog or podcast or whatever you have there. It's like akin to having a storefront, like in an in-person storefront. People want to be able to come in and browse and click around and not just be kind of like taken where you think they should go. They want that freedom. So it's my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think having a home base is important too, right? Because then you can own the audience if it's on your email list versus another platform. You can kind of bring everything to a central place that you control the experience of. Just because a website isn't necessary to get clients doesn't mean it's not helpful to get clients, right? Like you don't
100%.
need to be good at sales to get clients, but like you'll get a bunch more clients if you're good at sales. You don't need to have a defined niche, but like you're going to get a lot more clients if you have one. So this is one component. I think some people go too far to one side. They're either like, websites don't really matter. I'll just have my social profile and I can just DM clients. Or they're like, the website is everything. And if I can perfectly get it with the right statement on top and have the website, clients will just come to me. And I think there's problems with that thinking as well.
Yeah. 100%.
What do you think are the main pages that people should have on their site? As they're just thinking about the architecture of a site, what are the 3 to 5 most important components of the site?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have this all spelled out in a coach website blueprint because I think it's all can be there is like a standard structure that works really well for a coach. So first having your homepage, of course, that's like your landing spot where people hit as soon as they visit just your root domain. And I think that the goal of that page, if you have an email list, the goal of that page really should be to get someone to put in their name and their email and hit subscribe and get on your list. Because typically when someone comes to that page, they're curious, but they're not necessarily ready to hit like schedule now and book a free call and get on, become a client, but they're curious and they want a way to like get more information from you. So homepage that leads to some kind of opt-in, an about page that explains, who you are and what your story is and really how you can help them based on your origin story, really. And the goal of that page, again, can be like a lead gen. A work with me page, or some people call it services, but I think for a coach, work with me feels more personable. It feels more like relatable. And the goal of the work with me page really is it's more your sales page. It's doing harder work to like sell them on that free call. And people will ask me, they're like, well, should it sell my program or should it sell the free call? And my opinion is if you are offering a free call, like a consult or a sales call as part of your sales process, it should sell them on the call because
Agreed.
that's the next step that they have to take. Like, let's just sell them on taking the next step. But you can really sell it well by explaining like, hey, I'm going to teach you the number one tip that helps you, or the number one tool that helped me to recover from my divorce. Or I'm going to teach you the top 3, you're going to have the top 3 steps that you need to take next to land that job that you really want or whatever. Like, regardless of if we work together, this is what you're going to get. And that really will make it more likely that someone will click the button and schedule a call, which is the call to action that we want on that Work With Me page. The next page that I think that is really, really helpful is to have some kind of blog or podcast area. Now, I don't necessarily think everyone needs this in the very beginning, because I think sometimes content marketing on your website can be a little bit of a distraction depending on how well you know your audience. And so if like you're way in the beginning stages and even just creating a one-page website seems like a huge lift for you, then for sure that's a blog or podcast can be an advanced tactic that you can implement later. But I do think that having some kind of like blog or podcast, not only does it help with SEO, which, you know, is how you and I met for sure, but it also, it gives people a way to consume free content from you and get value if they're not comfortable enough yet to like get on your email list and give you their email. It's a step that they can take. And then the last kind of set of pages that I think is really helpful is going back to those landing pages that we were talking about earlier, having an opt-in page that that doesn't have any navigation. Its only goal is really just to get someone to put in their name and their email and get the free thing, whatever it is, free video, free PDF that you offer. And not having like a dedicated page for that. I know we're offering it to them on your homepage and maybe in some other places on your site, but having a dedicated page for that makes it really easy for you to more effectively get emails from social or from like a speaking gig that you might be doing. You can send people directly to that page instead of having them get kind of distracted by like all the other navigation and things going on your website. And then, of course, having like a custom thank you page that that they see after they put in their name and their email is really helpful. And that thank you page, you know, it's just a good user experience that says, hey, go check your email. Make sure you got this email that I'm sending you right now. Oh, and hey, here's this little video where I introduce myself, and I just love video as like a marketing tool because it's such a great way to build trust quickly. And they can hear your voice. You can tell them a little bit about you, provide a little bit of value maybe based on whatever the freebie is about that you're going to send them, and then call to action to schedule. And you have your scheduling link below the video.
I love that because I feel like the thank you page is the most overlooked page on people's websites.
Yes.
And for years I had just the like check your email and make sure it's not in spam thing, which is fine.
Yeah.
But the momentum you have after they downloaded the lead magnet with that small step, to be able to use that momentum to have them book a consult, for example, is huge. And there's other things you can do, low price products and stuff
For
like
sure.
that. But I really feel like maximizing that thank you page with a step that's a little bit higher commitment is such a huge opportunity for most coaches.
For sure. 'Cause psychologically, they're never more likely to say yes than they are in that moment when they've just said yes to something else. So yeah, it's powerful.
I had heard that years before I implemented it, that thank you page strategy, and I just didn't get around to implementing it. And then when I finally did, it was just like consult, consult, consult. I was like, why did I not do this earlier? Okay, so let's try to recap those pages for people. So we had
Yes.
the homepage, we had blog/podcast, work with me page, lead magnet specific page, and thank you page. Was that the 5?
About is actually
About page.
6.
Okay. About page. I agree with you too on the work with me page really selling the call. I think that's the way to go for most coaches. I've even found sometimes that it converts better to have an even more dialed down apply page, which is literally just like a calendar and some next steps, and isn't even trying to get too deep into the sale. People have to test, but sometimes I like the minimalist version.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay.
Testing is the number one thing on any website. Because every niche is slightly different. Every person's voice is going to come across to them slightly different. So this is a good foundation. But then if you're like, oh, actually, I've been doing it this way and it's working great, like, don't change it just because we said to.
Yeah. What are some things that, let's say a coach has those core pages, what are some things that people tend to overlook that make a difference in addition to just having those core pages?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that can be pretty easily overlooked is the power of like testimonials or case studies, which I'm pretty sure you teach your clients this too. Like I've seen that some of your clients even have like a dedicated case studies area, and every case study has a video and its own like page and everything. And I don't know, like if you're kind of just getting started, you may not necessarily need that robust of a case studies or testimonials like build out. But I do think that having testimonials on your site that are really curated to not just put the spotlight on you as the coach and say like, oh, Serena's coaching changed my life. It was awesome. Or Serena helped me get these breakthroughs and it was cool. Or, like they'll kind of be a little more vague like that, which is awesome if that's all you have. Like, great. But if you can really help the reader see, like, and encourage I actually have a blog post on my site that talks about the top 3 questions that I always ask people when I'm asking them to write a testimonial that helps to draw out these details. The first is like, where did they start? Like, what were their pain points when they came to you? And then what was the work you did together that helped them to solve those pain points? And then where are they now? Like, what is the result they got out of your work together? And you don't have to have like a huge long video or like 5 paragraphs of case studies in order to show that. You can do it. It can be a sentence per thing, really. But if you can paint that picture a little more clearly, or help the person writing the testimonial to paint that picture a little more clearly, that testimonial is going to be way more powerful because the reader is going to be able to see themselves in those words and see the possibility for them in those words. So yeah, for sure. I think testimonials is one area that's really overlooked.
That's a good one. And sharing that whole arc of the journey, I agree,
Mm-hmm.
is important.
Mm-hmm.
One that came up for me is like site speed. And that's one that's a little more technical. Like if someone's listening to this and they're like site speed, they like might not know what to do. I mean, there's basic stuff like the images and making sure they're not oversized and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. But um, that's a big one. I was curious for you, when I teach SEO, I usually do it from a content perspective, like just be targeting keywords that people are searching and writing in-depth content that's going to rank for that. How do you think about SEO when it comes to just the site in general? Like if someone's trying to come up for, spiritual business coach or something, are there things that they can do on their homepage in their title tags that make it more likely for non-content to rank on SEO?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are like technical pieces that Google looks at for your whole site that don't necessarily have to do with specific keywords, but they have to do with how well Google will just rank you in general. So things like having alt text on your images, which isn't really actually very hard to do. All website builders these days, Squarespace, WordPress, what have you, have like basically a box when you upload any image that says, what's the alt text for this image? And there are even tools you can use that will automate creating the alt text. And the alt text is really it's the text that appears if an image fails to load, and it's good for accessibility, and that is why Google ranks it or considers it when they're ranking your site. So that's something that is just a small thing to do that will help tick the needle. Having those keywords in your headlines, but in a way that is natural. Which again, here's the trick here, and that is kind of a content piece, but yeah, like that will help. Also, I'm trying to think of some other things that we do that that help with keyword ranking. Obviously, like page titles and meta descriptions, having those be geared towards the keywords that you want to rank for. I also find it really helpful to use a tool that can show me what are the websites that are ranking currently for those keywords and what are they doing? Like, who are the competitors and what are they doing? Because obviously whatever they're doing is working well. And how can I implement something similar in a way that will not be, copying, but will help me to compete. And that can be a helpful exercise too, because there may be some websites that are really, really big and it will be really hard to rank for those. And it might be a consideration of like, oh, well, do I want to try to rank for that keyword, or do I want to shoot for something that maybe has smaller volume but is more specific and will be really actually quite easy for me to rank for. And then there, of course, there's all the like off-page SEO that we could talk about, like getting featured on other websites that have higher domain authority than you and stuff like that, which, like that will help to increase your own domain authority as well if you are linked elsewhere. And Google will really like that too. So that's a whole other
I
that's a
feel
whole other
like
conversation.
people are often intrigued when I talk about SEO because that's been my main source of clients over the years.
Mhm.
And they're like, "Ooh, I like the idea of like someone searching for a problem they have, finding my article. They read my article. I'm an expert. They apply for a consult, and then that just happens, and I don't have to pay for ads. And it sounds
Mhm.
great, but there's actually like a lot to it. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot you have to learn. So usually when I start getting in the weeds and stuff like this, the person's like, "Oh, actually, like social media actually is sounding pretty good now, or maybe I'll just do a Facebook ad." So
Yeah.
the grass
What
is never greener. There's always something to
There's
learn,
always
whatever
work
you
to
want to do.
do.
So
Yeah. But for sure, like SEO can be so powerful. It is a long game though. Like, I mean, you know that too. You're not going to implement something and then like the next day or even the next week or even the next month, you're going to start like seeing a big uptick. But for sure, over the long term, like SEO can be really, really powerful.
agreed. What are your thoughts on, and I have a bias here, on WordPress versus Squarespace? Because I know that you build on WordPress.
Mhm.
My site is on Squarespace. And yeah, just pros and cons, why you like WordPress as a developer and I was going to say what you typically recommend to folks. I assume it's WordPress, but tell me more about that decision in your mind.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I love WordPress because we can do anything with it. We can design anything that we want. We can like functionally develop anything that we want. If we want like payment to work a certain way, or you know, if we want to build out a specific type of funnel that is really complex and does certain things, like we can do whatever we want. And I love that. Um, I also, but I also get that like I think Squarespace and Wix and other platforms like that can be really great if you are DIYing without any guidance. I would actually recommend something like Squarespace over WordPress because it's just a little more intuitive. It's easier to build with. We do use a drag and drop builder on our WordPress sites that's similar to Squarespace, just because I like to empower my clients to edit, be able to log in and revise their own copy or swap out an image or whatever. So we don't like hard code anything really ever. um, but yeah, that said, Squarespace is kind of like easier if you're DIYing. I do have like a website kit that's more of a lower ticket offer that is for the DIYer. And in that case, I show them how to use WordPress because that allows me to build out like the website kit templates that then they can just import and edit. And so like in that sense, I recommend WordPress if you have guidance like that with how to use it. But if you don't, yeah, I actually kind of in the pool with you there. I actually think Squarespace and Wix can be better.
That makes sense. Like WordPress is more customization if you're outsourcing it, or if you
Hmm.
have your website kit and you actually have templates and it's just fill in the blanks essentially. The reason I didn't do WordPress when I started is just like I just got overwhelmed. So I think
Hmm.
if people are noticing that they're like creatively avoiding actually what they need to do in their business because of the complexity of WordPress, just to do something simpler.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else we should talk about before we dive into the website audits?
I don't think so. I think it'll be fun.
All right, let's get going. So I sent um, in some of my clients that we're going to review, uh, and we're just going to go what we like, what we think can be
Hmm.
improved, and use it as an example.
Yep, for sure. So I'll tell you my things. I'm going to share my screen here in just a second, but feel free to hop in at any time, Greg, with your
Yeah,
inputs.
sounds good.
Let's see. Here we go. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so here we've got Claire. Oh, I'm really curious to hear from you, Greg. Claire mentioned that like her two biggest questions were how do I update the content in an efficient way, for one, and two, like how do I manage this website as I'm like changing my niche? Because she mentioned that the copy is actually outdated and she's revising her niche, but she didn't say what the new niche was. So I'm curious if you know.
Yeah. So I'm working with Claire now, and I think that her overall messaging is likely going to change. We haven't
Hmm.
talked about the website in a little bit,
Okay.
but I know that she's focused on people who are in sustainability and want to, elevate into a higher leadership role, and also people who are getting
Mm.
into sustainability. Um, and so,
Okay, gotcha. As I was reading through her website now, it seems like it's a little bit more focused on like advertising herself as a sustainability consultant, or at least some of the areas that I saw were that way. But so cool. We can talk about that for sure. The first thing that I noticed is that like the site in general is very like the design of it is simple and clean, and I didn't see like any big sort of layout issues. But I did see that on the work with me page, the like her Calendly links throughout are either broken or there aren't any times available. Like so on the work with me page, it's just it's the wrong event that's embedded. If you
yeah,
click book an impact audit, it scrolls you down to here, and then it just keeps kind of scrolling you down to the next section. But you can't really do anything.
that's
If
a
you
big one.
click,
I mean,
yeah, for sure. If you click Let's Talk, it takes you to a scheduling page, which does have a working page, a working Calendly, but there aren't any like open times on it. So I figure this is probably just because she's kind of in flux right now, and it's not really the website isn't a high priority thing. But for sure, if I come to a site and I'm interested in hiring someone and their Calendly stuff like kind of throughout isn't working, like here and there, there's going to be a bug, and like I can excuse that as a user. But if throughout it's not working, it's kind of like, oh, well, is their business still running? Did they shut it down? Like more likely to click away. So that's the biggest, for sure, the biggest easy thing I would say to fix. And also, like, this is just a reminder for all of us, really, is to like at least once a quarter or so like explore your website. Just click around and see what's happening and do all the scheduling links work and does the opt-in work and all of that because stuff just breaks over time sometimes without you like noticing it. Or you change the URL on your Calendly and forget about it and forget to update it on your website and then it breaks there. And so it's just good to keep an eye on it every couple of months just to make sure that everything is still working. Let's see. I really liked the what clients say section and how it like again I think this is like because you teach about case studies maybe is why she set it up
yeah,
this way. And so if they can go to this page and they can read a little snippet or they can click in on any of these buttons and they can watch a video and hear a little read a little bit more about that person. And I really think that that is effective in really illustrating the work that she can do as a coach. The one thing that I do think is missing from this for sure is like let's sprinkle in some call to actions on these sub pages
agreed.
like below the video. Let's have apply now or schedule now, and then again at the bottom of the page if they scroll all the way here, let's give them something to do. But
Agreed.
I like that area. Any other thoughts on that?
Agree with everything you said. I like that this is getting into new territory. I like the simple navigation on the top,
Mm-hmm.
that we stuck to like five things. I really like that the
Mm-hmm.
Let's Talk is highlighted top right as a
Mm-hmm.
different color button. That's where we want to get people to.
Yep. Yep, 100%. I love using buttons in the top right. It's kind of a story brand thing that they suggest, and I mean, it's very signature in my. If you go look at my portfolio, almost every site I build has that, and I just think it's such great user experience because either let's talk or start here or whatever verbiage you want to use, and either link them to your email list or link them to your scheduling page, whichever one you want to like push the most because I just think it's a good user experience. And yeah, having like no more than five menu items, I think is really great. Now, there's no homepage. I like homepage option on this menu, which I've had this conversation with so many people. I'm curious what you think, Greg. Like homepage or no homepage in the menu?
I'm assuming when you click on the Claire Osborne logo, it goes to the homepage.
It does, and that is what where the conversation is like
Right.
if it.
I'm
Go
I'm
ahead.
okay with either. I don't feel strongly that you need to have a separate link to home.
Yeah, I usually keep it unless we have more menu items than like four or five, and then I'll take it off as like an optional thing because most people. But actually, it's about according to my informal poll, it's about 50% of people know that clicking the logo takes you home. So
What's the research tab?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's a call to action.
Mm-hmm.
So I, if it were me, how I would organize the menu is if we want to have home, we could have that. Then I'd probably just have about.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would have maybe like either work with me or let's talk, but I would
Mm-hmm.
have that be one page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I would have this page as the button
Mm-hmm.
if this was the main call to action of the site and it
Mm-hmm.
was working and you were building your list where you could then invite people to book. So I'd
Yeah.
probably have it, and I wouldn't have it say the research. It's
No,
kind
I
of an
wouldn't
intriguing
either.
title, but it's unusual. So I'd do like
Yeah.
free guide or free report or something.
Yeah, me too. Like I like the idea of report if you want to really show that it's like research based. But yeah, when I clicked on the research, I thought it was going to take me to like some scholarly articles that she
Or
had
a
written or
blog
something,
or something. Yeah, I don't
or a
know.
blog. Yeah, yeah. When it comes to naming things, like just being crystal clear and not being creative, actually with
Hmm.
navigation is more helpful. So I actually, yeah, I like that she has an opt-in, but I would also just feature it more prominently. Like I would call to action to that more on the homepage, which she does here. But again, like it wasn't super engaging to me because I didn't really know what the research was. So yeah. Well, and then her last question was, like how do I manage a website and update the content as my offer is evolving? Like I don't want to go through the process of doing a complete rewrite every 6 months as I figure out my messaging. Um, and maybe that's something that you and she could work on. But sort of my thought was like, well, if you're really testing messaging and trying to figure out what works, like in the short term, something that you could consider doing would be to temporarily streamline it down to like 1 or 2 pages. I don't love that just for like SEO impact and stuff. That'll be kind of tricky. But like if it's just temporary as you are refining your messaging, having to only like refine 1 or 2 pages of copy is a lot easier than trying to refine a whole bunch of copy, like multiple pages. So that's a suggestion. But I'm curious. Do you have any other
That's an
thoughts on that,
interesting
Greg?
idea. Yeah, I think if it was a more dramatic pivot that she was making, like let's say she was a coach, a leadership coach for people in sustainability, and then she was like, I want to be like a spiritual coach for people
Mm-hmm.
who, you know, like want to awaken or something. It's so different. Then I'd be like, maybe go to a one page landing page with a lead magnet and test some copy and test a lead magnet. Um, for a less drastic difference, I'd probably work with what she's got.
Yeah, which it sounds like based on what you said, she's
Yeah.
keeping a similar, it's just slightly different messaging. So, yeah, just forcing giving yourself a deadline and just forcing yourself to just get out the copy in a certain amount of time and just put it up uh and not spend 20 hours on it. Like I feel like that's the thing I coach on the most when clients are redoing their website is the copy because it can just be tough. So,
One thing before we move on that
mhm.
I want to give props for is I feel like when I land on this homepage, I know what's happening. Like
Mhm.
coaching sustainability leaders to be a force for change, like, she might be refining her messaging and her niche, but it's like, okay, I understand what this site is about, and that's not always the case.
Mhm. Yep. 100%. And I like that she has call outs just in terms of like design. It is very clean. There's an even amount of padding around all of the elements. Nothing's kind of like if this were way larger and this were the same size as it is now, it would feel off balance. I like that she's got call outs like this that highlight certain sentences because it just makes it more scannable, stuff like that. So
The
yeah,
logos are nice.
I do think that this is really hard to read. So in terms of design, whenever you're using an overlay, just make sure that it's strong enough so that the text is readable. Otherwise, people just aren't going to read it, unfortunately. So
How do you feel
cool.
about this brochure style homepage that sort of teases the other sections versus just
Hmm.
doing something like, hey, I'm just going to have a great headline. I'm going to have the lead magnet call to action, and I'm
Hmm.
just going to focus on that one call to action for the page, and then they can go to the navigation. How do you think about that?
I think it works a little bit better for like a membership portal than it does for like a marketing website. What I prefer to do is something that's a little bit of a mix. So, like for example, let's see, this might be how we do it on Grace's site. Um, so this is Grace. She's a I don't know current or past client of yours, Greg. And
Yeah, that's fine.
what what we did was on the homepage, if I remember right, all of the calls to action are to download. Actually, this one does go to her Work With Me page, so maybe I'll have to look elsewhere to show you an example of this. So I think we actually did do more of a brochure style on hers. Let me pull up another sample from a client. So this is Krista St. Germain. She does coaching for widowed moms, which again, like Claire, it's just super clear right when you come to the
The best.
page.
This is one of the best niches for a for life coaching that I've
Yeah,
ever seen.
yeah. And I just love supporting her because her work is making such a difference. Anyway, so this one goes to her Work With Me page and testimonials. Man, I'm kind of failing as I'm looking at for examples, but I'll pretend that this is what this site does. So typically what I like to do is I like to call to action to the free resource, the opt-in, the lead magnet on the homepage, except that I like to include, if they have a blog or a podcast, I like to include like the 3 most recent.
Okay.
Because I think that that's just a really good credibility builder. Like if it's a secondary call to action, like we have a primary call to action that we really would prefer someone take. And then if they aren't ready to take that, we have a secondary that's like an option for them. And the blog or podcast serves as
Go
that.
to my site, go to gregfaxon.com. Not to say this is the paragon of all websites, but I think I do what you're saying.
Okay.
So we got the quiz call to action, logos, and then these are not my most recent blog posts. These are all blog posts that have the highest conversion rate for the lead magnet.
That's
So I know that when people read this, they end up on my list. So it's sort of like, do they download the lead magnet or do they need content to
help them.
content upgrade to a lead magnet? So that's how I've done it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. Yep. And at the end of, I'll just click on one of yours. Like I love that as they read, sort of built into it is that you call them to action for whatever it is that you want them to opt in for. Like that just really helps make it more effective. And especially, I assume you probably do this. Yeah. Like at the end, having, again, like if they've scrolled all the way down there, let's just get them to opt in. So yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else about this one, Greg, before we move on?
No, I think that's great.
Okay, cool. So our next is Tom Killen. And his 2 biggest questions were, how can I best set up my homepage to engage my target client, which might just be a continuation of this conversation that we've been having. And then how can I better relate to target clients with my about page? He specifically was wondering. And he mentioned that target clients are, which, correct me if this is wrong, but leaders within large organizations who are either preparing for or taking on roles that are a stretch.
Yes.
So my thought about the site, about the homepage, like calls to action and how to engage it more, I think it really is in terms of like a call to action stance, what we were saying. Like he calls to action to take the quiz here. And then down here, he calls to action to work with him, which in terms of having primary and secondary calls to action on one homepage, maybe that works because I don't know. Oh no, he does have articles. Yeah. So I would almost keep the call to action to be the quiz, and then have like a preview of the few latest articles here, or maybe just the top articles that get the most engagement or the most conversion. I think the one exception to that would be, I have some clients whose audiences are very direct and they really just, like when they come to the site, they're like, I'm not here to mess around. I don't want to download something. I literally just want to talk to you. And so I don't know his audience well enough to know if that's the case, but that would be one situation where it would be like, well, if that is the case, maybe we set something up so it's more like this site where we've got like a primary schedule and a secondary, like download the thing. And we style them this way because this is the primary that people are more looking for, that we more want them to take. And then secondary is to opt in. So that's something to consider if your audience is like, just show me where to schedule.
How would you know? Would you be hearing things from them that I can't even find where to book a call and it was annoying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like my main thoughts. Also, in terms of design, I think that there's a lot that we could do or a lot that could be improved for Tom, especially considering the fact that his audience is, executives, and we really want to build trust with them, like from the get-go. So in terms of design, like I would make these icons smaller, and I would, well, I wrote down what my notes were. I'd make the icon smaller. I'd make the text a little bit bigger here just so it's easier to scan. I would, for these testimonials, these are quite hard to scan. This is something that a lot of people don't know, is that when text on a web page is longer than about, no, I don't know, 75 characters or so on one line, our brain just kind of shuts down and it doesn't tend to read it. So I would actually, if you can, I would get photos of these people, which he's got so much information about them. Actually, this one is confidential, so that might not work for that one. But for the testimonials on your homepage, if you can get photos, and then a lot of them are confidential. I forgot about that as I was scanning this.
Yeah,
If you
but
can,
maybe it
go
might
ahead.
even just be worth having the two testimonials with pictures that you can identify and saving the confidential ones because it's so much to scan anyway, like you're saying. And
Yeah.
then people actually read them. If you have a photo, two testimonials, maybe
Yes.
bolding a sentence or two
Yes.
in it.
Exactly. That's what I was going to suggest, is like maybe save the confidential client ones for in your email list or something if you want to quote someone. And then here on the web page, we could have, text over here, photo over here, and then the text wouldn't be quite so long, and you could bold the really results focused words so that it's more scannable. Because right now this looks very simple, and sometimes if it looks really simple and there are too many words on one line, people will just scan, they just won't read it, and they won't think it's that important, when really this is like one of the most
Yeah.
impactful sections on the
There's no
homepage.
way people are reading this section currently.
Yeah. Let's see. I think that too, I noticed on his Work With Me page, I think he could expand more on like what he does and how he helps. Because right now it's just kind of this one section and then some testimonials. Which, I mean, maybe that's intentional. Maybe he's found that
I
this
think
converts
he's
better.
I think he's going off of my strategy, which is very minimalist for the apply page.
Yeah, which, if you find that does work well, then I think that's great. I guess I just was kind of like, maybe I'm just craving more visual here. Like, to me as
Yeah,
a
that's
user, this
valid.
feels really like not a lot, but and then he wondered about his about page too, and how he can make it more like connect more with his people.
Bigger
And
font. How do you feel about the font
yes.
and the margins? I feel like I want it to be more readable.
Yes, for sure. There's definitely inconsistency of body font size throughout, and I think that this is a really nice size that is easy for me to read, and making all of the body font that size will really help. I also just think having a little more visual interest on this page is going to make it more likely that someone will read it. Like maybe, this is a blue background section and you have a different photo over here, or some kind of graphic, or even just a stock photo. And then this is another white background section with some more imagery, or just kind of breaking up the text in a way that feels like styling the text in a way that feels more scannable. I'll pull up a good example of this. We actually just launched the site this week, and I love it because it's a
Oh,
good
so
example.
good.
It's a good example of how styling text can just make it so much more easy to read. Like, even in the headlines, how it's emphasized, how the important words are emphasized with a different font. And it's just a lot more readable. So if you can think about styling in even just using bold and italics, like you don't have to get fancy with different fonts if you're DIYing, especially it can be a little tricky, but like just think about styling it a little more. It just makes it more scannable for sure.
Got it. Yeah,
So,
I'd love to see like if he has pictures of him like speaking or anything obviously that's going to build social proof. You could kind of pop some of
mhm.
those in there.
Yep, for sure. I totally agree. I think those were the main things on Tom's site that I had written down.
I like the simplicity of the site.
Well, it's funny because it's built on WordPress, which I know this just from looking at it. Like I didn't even look up the tech aspects, but like it's built on WordPress, and it's like the default WordPress theme, and it's actually the best use of that default theme I think I've seen. Like it is clean, it is simple, it is straightforward. Um, yeah, I just think that the layout could, in some places, could use improvement or a little more visual interest. So yeah, cool. Any other thoughts on this one before we move on?
Nope.
Awesome. Okay, so the last that we've got is Pam, which is so funny because I think Pam's currently working with you, right, as a client,
Yeah.
and she actually hired me too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're going to work together in the new year. And so when she was like, "Oh, will you do an audit?" Like, sure, we can do an audit on your current site and maybe help her improve some things between now and then. So I love Pam's site in terms of like, I love its images. I love that they're all like, she's a coach for moms that, they want to stop yelling at their kids. They want to feel like they're doing a better job. And I love that her photos are all like geared towards that. Like she's got photos of her with her kids just like all over
Yeah,
the
that's a good
place.
one.
Yeah, it's just so cute. So I love that. I love the visual interest there and that it's so topically related. I know just from talking with her that like she really wants to update these photos because these photos are all quite old. Like her kids are like teenagers now. And that is kind of, as her kids have grown, I know that like kind of her audiences, like the people that she coaches, their kids get older too. So like she's kind of coaching a little bit more now, like moms with like slightly older kids, though I'm sure she still will work with moms with younger kids. But like, so updating those photos is high on our priority list for sure. And then just in general, like the layout of the design is really, which is why we're going to work together because her copy is so on point. Like I read this and I'm like, yeah, I can relate with all these things. I'm a mom. I've got 3 little kids. Like I can totally relate, but the design itself just doesn't, it's just not giving the same credibility to the copy that the copy shows authority of. And that's what I'm most excited to work with her on. I love that it's very, and just stop me. I feel like I'm kind of like, I'm on a tangent here. I love the colors that they are so, like this blue and this purple are very vibrant. That feels like there's lots of energy there. It feels like hopeful and happy and like, yeah, sometimes we talk about heavy stuff as parents, but also like this is a good place to hang out. And so I like that. And we are definitely going to keep some of that in her palette. One thing we are going to change is her logo because it's time to up level it. And so that make it more modern, make it more readable. Right now on the top, I don't know if it does this for you. I don't think it did for Pam when it loaded, but for me, like the logo doesn't load at the
Oh wait.
top.
Oh, Pam sees a logo.
I thought that she did when I
So
last
that's
talked to her
what
about
I
it,
think I've
but
shared this with Pam, but yeah, that's the thing that drives me the most crazy on the site is it's very disconcerting when there's
hmm
nothing above the
hmm
navigation. There's that blank
hmm
space.
Yep, yep, exactly. So that's something that we'll obviously, when we rebuild our site, it'll have a working logo and it'll just be more modern and updated. Like I love the treatment of this is her book page, and I love this cover. Like it's so
Yeah.
clean. The heart is still there, like the heart that's part of her logo is still here, but it's just more modern. It's more up leveled, and I'm sure we'll take inspiration from this when we redo her logo. But yeah, I really like that treatment. So. Let's see, what else did I write down? Oh, I noticed on her homepage, she's got 2 forms on it, like one here and then another one here. And that's like generally not my favorite thing to do, just because I think that forms on page are kind of ugly and I'd rather just have one.
Yeah.
If we need to have it. I do agree that having the CTA, those call to actions in 2 places is helpful, but let's either change this one to be a button, and if you click it, it scrolls you back up to the form that's up here, or even better, let's do something like, I think that we do this on the site. Let's do something like if they click the button, it triggers a pop-up where they can put in their name and their email. I like that so much more because it keeps the page looking really clean. But again, like there's stuff that you just got to test to see. Like some people prefer the on-page opt-in instead of having the pop-up because they find that it converts a little bit better. But those are my thoughts as a designer for sure.
How do you feel about having a search within the site that she has in the top right? Do people use that?
They totally do. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
do.
Hmm.
Okay.
Especially, I think it's not really important if you don't have a blog or a podcast. If you do have a blog or a podcast, then I would strongly that you populate actually are, keeping up with, then I for sure would have it at least somewhere. It doesn't have to be this prominent. Like it can be in the footer, as like a little search bar or a search icon. But for sure, having that is important. I've gotten complaints on my site when I didn't have one. And so I've started building it in by default onto our websites that have like an archive of blog or podcast episodes for that reason. It's just, again, it's good user experience. It helps them to explore our site. I've had people, I remember someone posted on like in a group that I'm in, and they were like, I just fell down the best rabbit hole, and it was Jennie's blog. And I just was searching, like, I spent several hours today just like reading all of her posts, and like she, read my mind of all the different things that I was struggling with. And so when you read comments like that, it's like, okay, yeah, I think that a search box, people do use them.
Yeah,
Long
for
answer.
sure. Okay, that's good to know. I had actually taken mine off. I would always assumed like if I were going to search someone's stuff and I wanted their perspective on it, I would be like WordPress for Squarespace, Jennie Lakenan. Like I would just be
Yeah.
searching that in Google.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a good tip. One of the
Hmm.
things I want to give Pam props for, and it's related to that you like the photos and the
Hmm.
colors. You really get a vibe from the site, and it's Pam's vibe.
Hmm.
So the branding, even if the design isn't where we want it to be, I think the branding is like really in a good
Hmm.
place and on the right track because it
Yeah.
represents her.
Yeah, for sure. It is. I'm just so excited to like just emphasize that even more. Um, okay, let's see. What else did I write? Um, yeah,
Oh,
those
I
are the.
have one more thing.
Oh, go ahead.
So Pam's a licensed clinical social worker, and she worked in a school before coaching. And I don't see that just as we're perusing quickly. I know she has it somewhere in different parts of her assets, but I almost want that like up front and center just because I feel like being able to set yourself apart from other coaches who don't have that sort of licensure or the credibility, I do think that's a powerful thing and she should use it.
Yeah, 100%. Like either on your about and work with me as kind of like part of the subtext, or if you really want to get like uh really really hit it home, you'll see some people who will have like they'll have a main headline like this, but then they'll be underneath, they'll say something like with Pam Howard comma whatever like the the what's the word I'm looking for, like MD or whatever it is, whatever
LCSW, yeah.
the
Yeah.
yeah, they'll put that, and that just helps to really boost that. One thing that that Pam does too, which we'll see if I can download this and show it to you. I don't think I can easily. But going back to the thank you page conversation that we had earlier, like she actually does have quite a nice thank you page that says, after you opt in, it just actually let me just opt in right now. See if it'll pull it up. Um, it says like, thanks, you're all signed up, but wait,
Yeah.
here's
This is
your.
this is what my strategy is.
I don't know
I don't know
why.
why it's jiggling so
I have
much,
no
but
idea why it's jiggling. Oh my gosh, that's really bizarre.
I thought it was
Um,
gonna stop after three shakes, and I was like, that actually is a good strategy. But no, not if you
well,
keep
I'm gonna
going.
go back so it doesn't make anybody dizzy. But yeah, basically, it's like, but wait, before you dive into the 3 steps that I'm sending you, book your free mini session, and then it has
Yeah.
a request a consult link under it.
That's what I teach, and
Yeah.
it does work.
Yeah, I like that. So there's definitely technical like SEO stuff. Like most of her pages are missing a like a page title and a meta description and stuff. So those are all things that um, that you can look at on your own site if you're watching this to see, are those things I'm doing? If I really want to boost my SEO strategy, like those would definitely be places to improve, to put a page title that has relevant keywords and a meta description for every page. But for Pam, that's something that we do by default, so we'll do that as part of her project. Um, but yeah, those were my main thoughts on Pam's site.
Love it.
Cool, awesome. Well, where do you want to take it from here, Greg? Those were our audits, but I know we talked a little bit about.
Let's go to Grace again briefly,
Mm-hmm.
because I think this is to see a full site that you've worked
Mm-hmm.
on and um,
Mm-hmm.
what obviously we don't have the before version of it in front of us, but just being
Mm-hmm.
able to see your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
What is the main call to action for the homepage? Where does that go?
Yeah, so this main call to action, they click it, it triggers a pop-up where the user can put in their name and email. And then if they click they click grab your free, it takes them to her thank you page, which has, like we talked about, it has that, like, hey, check your email. And here is my, like, a free consult. And or apply, actually, might be her call to action there. So that is the main call to action for the homepage. That's also what Start Here does. It sends them to the opt-in page where they can opt in the same way. Um,
But this is different though. This is a master class
you're right,
versus
it
a
is
workbook.
different. This one is the ebook, and then this one is the master class. I
Got
think
it.
this was the ebook when we launched it, but she's
Yeah.
opened up a
She,
master class and now, and they swapped out the link.
got it.
So
Her photos are so good.
they are really
I
good.
feel like she comes off as casual and professional at the same time. Like I love that she's
Hmm.
barefoot in the photo, but like
Hmm.
she looks very together.
Hmm. Yep. And like kind of throughout, that's sort of
Hmm.
her vibe. And this is, oh, are we back? I feel like I
Yep.
bugged out for a second. I feel like this is something to keep in mind. I get asked so many questions about website photos, and it's something that people really struggle with. My biggest tip for your photographer is just to make sure that, like, for every photo that they take kind of like up close, of your figure that's more headshot style, get them to take one that's like way pulled back that has lots of room around you for copy on top of the photo.
Makes sense.
Grace, we actually didn't have a ton that were like that, but we got away with it because she was on a plain background. So we were actually able to use Photoshop to like extend the photo. Um, and so it worked out. But that's why like all of these, that's why most of these photos have like different background colors. So it's either brown or white or black because that was the solid background that we had to work with, and it worked great with her branding. But yeah, I think that's kind of a photo tip for you. Something else that we did, and again, this is more in terms of like design, is we didn't want to just use photos of Grace everywhere, but we still wanted to have visual interest, and also didn't want to use like stock photos everywhere. We wanted it to feel a little more creative than that, and so I'll totally credit Grace with the idea. She saw kind of line graphics like this on a couple of other sites, and she was like, "Oh, that could work really well," and so we tied that in. And I think it just added the touch of like still really clean and minimal, but also like creative, that we were looking for.
And
So
those are just royalty images. You're able to go into a database and find the line graphics you
hmm
used, or
yeah, yep.
nice.
Creative Market is one that's really good. I think the only manipulation that we really had to do was we swapped out like what was in this thought bubble and we changed the colors and stuff. But yeah, Creative Market has a whole bunch of really good ones you can purchase. But
Nice.
again, like we tried to use a mixture of like men and women because she works with both men and women. Um, yeah. So that's another thing I like here. What other thoughts did you want to touch on this, Greg?
I'm curious for your thoughts on social media badges, because I know sometimes people will really showcase those, and then now
Mm-hmm.
people aren't on your site anymore. They're on the
Mm-hmm.
platform,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to control their attention for the rest of the session.
Yeah.
On the other hand, like I know for Grace, she does have a big Instagram following. It is a big part
Mm-hmm.
of her business. I assume she has it in the footer.
Yep. Yep. And by that you
Um,
mean like linking out to your social
yeah,
media platforms.
yeah. So that's what I would like to do. That's what I like to do. But I feel like I just see a lot of people really showcasing those links out above the
Mm-hmm.
fold in their main navigation. And I'm always feeling like unless you know what you're doing and that's your strategy is you actually would prefer them to be on your
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn or whatever than your website, I feel like that's a lost opportunity just because the template was formatted that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I agree. I prefer to put them in the footer because, like, as a user, if I'm visiting someone's site and they're active on a social media channel that I use, and I can't find that link, I'm going to get frustrated.
Sure.
And so I like having them, but yeah, we don't usually put them in the main navigation unless the client specifically requests it. Something else that we'll do too, which this kind of, I mean, it doesn't put it in the nav, but it does put it more primary, is we might do it something like for this client, she is all over her social media, all over her Instagram. And that's a huge, huge nurture point for her. So what we did was we created like this dedicated Instagram section on her homepage just to make it easy for people to find.
That's
Um,
cool.
we've actually
It's
moved.
almost its own little call to action.
It is, yeah. We originally put actually like a feed preview of her Instagram here, so it showed like the 4 or 6 most recent posts, and it would like dynamically update. But we've moved away from doing that now, just because like for whatever reason, Instagram breaks that integration a lot. They do it with WordPress. I would assume it probably works that way with most platforms, where you just have to like re-authenticate it like once a month, and it's like nobody's got time for that. So anyway, we've kind of moved away from doing that. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that social media linking.
What are your I think this is my final question is just the general thought on lead magnets is that if you just invite people to join a newsletter, they won't, they'll be less likely to join it than if they get, a lead magnet in return, an ebook, a video, a cheat sheet, a quiz.
Hmm.
And there are some prominent people who know what they're doing with email marketing,
Hmm.
who make their call to action a newsletter. It's usually like a branded newsletter of some type where they're able to make it feel more concrete and substantial.
Yeah.
But have your thoughts changed at all around having a primary call to action be a lead magnet versus just a newsletter up front?
Yeah. For most people, I think they don't have the credibility to make their newsletter appealing like it is for people that are really big brands. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Is
Like backlink O'Brien Dean is who comes to
Mhm.
mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you have that kind of credibility and you literally have testimonials for your newsletter that you can put on that opt-in page, like, and oodles of them, like, okay, cool. Do a newsletter opt-in. But most of us, that's not the case. And so having a PDF or a video or some kind of training that you're giving them to opt in is just going to have a higher conversion rate. But yeah, I've thought about doing that, about creating like a newsletter only opt-in, because like my newsletter is kind of that way, where I do have some testimonials that I could include, but I don't know. But again, it's like I don't know that that would actually work as well as like my blueprint or whatever that people are opting in for. So yeah, in general,
I guess the answer is to test, I would assume, with as
it
with most
is.
things.
It is. But yeah, for sure, having like a lot of social proof in the form of testimonials for your newsletter is going to help a lot if you want to test it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let's wrap and let's just try to come up with one small thing that someone could do that would make a big difference. Maybe we each choose one because I think we covered a
Mhm.
bunch today.
Yeah, we
So trying
totally
to make
did.
it really actionable for people. If they had, let's say, I've got 20 to 30 minutes this week to do something on my website, assuming I have an existing website,
Hmm.
that would make a difference. What would you choose? Highest leverage action.
Yeah, I would, if I looked at my website, I would go back to our testimonials conversation and I would evaluate my website. And if I saw myself in what we said of just like, oh, I mean, my testimonials are like, this coach is great, but they're not necessarily spelling the story of the before and after of, what that client got, then I would take those 3 questions that we talked about, which, like, again, I have a blog post that talks about that. It's like how to write client testimonials with confidence or something like that. And take those 3 questions, and I would email some of my past clients that are totally that case study, and I would replace the testimonials, and I would bold like the results based stuff. That would probably be about 30 minutes of work. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, that's the highest form of marketing. It's just for a coach, what your clients are saying
Mm-hmm.
they've been able to do. I like that one. I would say if you have a lead magnet that people are opting in for, but you're not utilizing the thank you page, I would go to, for example, on my site, you can see an example of this. The but wait before you dive in let's book a call to help you implement what you learn and sending them into a consult. For people who are getting opt-ins, that will make a big difference. I would say if you're not getting opt-ins or if you don't have a lead magnet on the site, ooh, I don't know if this is 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's why I didn't go there. I was like, that's
Showcasing
gonna be a lot longer than 30 minutes.
showcasing what you do have on the website if you have one. I guess are those two
Yeah.
actions on my end.
Love it.
Send an email to Jenny. Take even less than 5 minutes. Just
Totally.
send her a PayPal. Just boom. Here you go. Um, all right, Jenny, thank you so much for your time. Anything else that you want to share with folks in terms of where they can find you if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah. So you can find me on my website, jennylakenen.com. And I'm sure you'll probably link it somewhere around. I do custom website design for coaches that are ready to, they're like Pam, they're ready, they've got their niche dialed, they know what they're doing, and they're just really ready to up level. If you're a new coach and you're like, oh, I love your work and I just can't afford to pay you, and I know that I don't, before even asking, I know I can't or whatever, and you're just getting started and you're refining your niche, then I do have a lower ticket offer as well called Website Kit for Coaches. That it's basically a DIY website course that's really short but powerful. It helps you to create a website that has an opt-in, a scheduling link, and it tells people what you do. And you can get it done in a weekend.
Love it. Thanks, Jenny. We'll talk soon.
Bye.